I should probably watch the other Alien movies. Probably. Hey there, Cinephiles. Today I'm reviewing Alien Romulus. This is the latest film in the Alien franchise, and I believe it takes place after Alien 1. I'm like 90% sure on that. But anyways, this follows a new group of protagonists that are about in their late teens, and at the helm are Kaylee Spaney and David Johnson. I just gotta say, it's always nice when we get a little treat that's a genre film on a big scale. Not that this is on the biggest of scales, but it's a pretty good size scale, and I'm glad we got it as a space horror sci-fi. I need more of it because that genre is just great. And that's also the great thing about sci-fi. You have these really entertaining visuals, characters, and action, while at its core there are very great themes woven into it. And just like the other few Alien movies that I have seen, this also has great themes that include thoughts on capitalism, colonialism, and evolution. And because this is of course a sci-fi film, all of these are explored in a very interesting way. Could it have explored it a bit more? Most likely, but for as much as it does touch on these themes, I do find it satisfying enough. Let me go back now and touch on the cast of this film. Kaylee Spaney, I love her so much in what I've seen her in so far. However, this isn't her best role. It felt like the writers of the film didn't quite know the talent that they had with Kaylee Spaney, because to me, she's one of the most uninteresting characters in the entire film. And not for lack of her trying to make the character actually a character, because it's the writing where I really feel the fault in it. It just felt like even though she's the main character, she was just kind of there for the majority of the film. And she definitely tried to bring something to this role, but there just wasn't anything there for her to grab onto. That being said, there was someone who clearly stole the film for me, and that was David Johnson as Andy. Easily the best character and performance in this whole film. I just really like what they did with him and his character, and just the performance that he's able to bring out in all of these scenes. I don't really want to get into his character because I liked where they went with him, and I didn't really think they would go that way until it actually happened, or at least moments before, and I am so glad they did. As for the rest of the cast, they were fine to good. I also really wanted more of Isabella Merced, but she just ended up being pretty okay in this. Again, not necessarily anything to her fault, it was just how the character was just kind of written. But now getting into some other positives that I really liked with this film, the visuals are great. From the cinematography to the set design, all of it just works really, really well for me, and the vibe of the film is just, it's great. It looks great. The only thing I have some complaints about are more so CGI. This film didn't have the biggest budget in the world, so when there were some clear CGI moments, it did pull me out a little bit. But that being said, when they actually used puppets and practical things, my goodness did it look great. The look of the xenomorph throughout the ship is just amazing. It's terrifying and gruesome, and it feels so tangible, and that's what made it so great. Moving on now to the sound design, which is honestly a top 3 thing I was looking forward to in this film, especially having seen this in Dolby. And I gotta say, there are some jaw-dropping moments with that sound design, but not nearly as many as there could have been. And look, I understood why certain moments had a score, but it just would have felt more impactful if you felt the vacuum of sound. And there's a couple of those moments when it actually happens, and those were much more impactful to me than any of the score in this. Another thing that I wasn't hugely a fan of was kind of the pacing of the film. I rocked with it for most of it, but there were some parts I was like, okay, let's get it going, especially because the story does feel so familiar. Honestly, if you're a fan of the Alien franchise, you're probably going to love this film because it does pull from a lot of those films, and it does seem to be more of the best parts of those films, and it just kind of compiles them all together. But it is also because it does feel so familiar that you're kind of just, okay, you know what's happening next. I will say there is a turn that it takes, and I'm glad it does take that turn, even though it does feel a little late in the game, and at the very end I do wish it was a little different. But overall, it is a pretty satisfying story and a pretty satisfying tale, and this of course is coming from someone who hasn't seen the entire franchise. And I would definitely say this, you might get lost if you don't know anything about any other Alien movie. So it might be best to study up if you're thinking of watching this film. But even then, I honestly have no idea how the public is going to respond to this film. I myself am in an interesting spot with this, as I do like many aspects in the overall film, but there are plenty of aspects where I'm like, okay, not terrible, but it's also not necessarily going to be anything memorable. This film is just a lot of good with a lot of like fine. But either way, we do love supporting Hispanic filmmakers, so shout out to Fede Alvarez, who I actually need to see his other films, especially Evil Dead and Don't Breathe. I give Alien Romulus a 3.5 out of 5 stars. This film honestly might go down to a 3 with a rewatch, or it might solidify itself at a 3.5. I'm not exactly sure, but I do want to check it out in IMAX. But alright, those are my thoughts on Alien Romulus. Be sure to let me know what you think of it down in the comments below. Also, be sure to let me know which is your favorite Alien movie. As of right now, for me, it's Aliens, which is the second Alien movie. But again, I haven't seen the whole franchise, so maybe that changes. But alright, as always, thank you guys for watching, liking, and subscribing. Be sure to stay tuned for more Yeti Films content, and I'll watch you later.